Hello, good evening. It's Mike with the Romans 1:16 podcast. And tonight I'm going to, excuse me, my neck, do something just a little bit differently if I can. Um, lately it seems as if I don't really have the time to sit down and just put podcast episodes together. And the Anchor app is just so confusing to use. So I decided I'm just going to start doing YouTube videos. So if you don't know my YouTube channel, follow it. I'll put the link when I upload this video. But anyways, I kind of wanted to just do my testimony. I've never really have done anything like this before. As you can see, I'm rough looking and my hair's all messed up and got my PJs on. But something I've been wanting to do. A lot of people do this, and I just want to encourage somebody tonight. Maybe you went through the same lifestyle I did. I don't know, but without further ado, let's get into it. So, I started off with my childhood. I was born a healthy baby to a loving mother who loved on me. She was a single mother. My father wasn't in my life, and my childhood wasn't like one of those childhoods you hear about on TV, or other people's testimonies are like, "Oh, I was beaten as a kid," or whatever the case may be. No, my child wasn't nothing like that. Um, my innocence was taken from me at the age of 6, and I won't get into detail with that. But for the most part, childhood was pretty good. My mother loved me, cared for me, and it wasn't until I want to say the age of 7, maybe 8. I can't remember. But my mother did have a situation where she was addicted to crack cocaine, and but thank the Lord, thank God that she never really forgot about me. I guess you could say, like it was secret. Like I had no idea what was happening. It wasn't those situations where I came home and found her like out like this or whatever. Definitely wasn't nothing like that. I would come home and I would still eat regularly, still go to school regularly. Like I had no idea what was happening. So, but with that being said, after that transpired, um, Denise Slay, who is she's a retired police officer now. At the time, she was a caseworker when my mom got taken away from her mom and put into children's home, foster care system, whatever you want to call it. But they kept up as friends, and I guess my mom reached out to her one day and she got her some help. And so we ended up moving into Morning Star. And after we moved into Morning Star, we were required to go to church. So this is kind of like my first, I want to say first time being exposed to church, because when I was living at the house at the age of 7 when my mom was on the drugs, I did go to a Baptist church outside of my normal hometown. So like I live here and it was like a couple of miles outside of town. But anyways, I went to a church. It wasn't my first time being exposed, but it was my first time being exposed to religion. So we were required to go to a Catholic church, and that was part of the deal. If you're going to be in rehab, you have to go to church. So we did. And it's kind of cool because it was my first time being exposed to religion, being exposed to who this God figure is and what he does. And even my love for ties, believe it or not, came from that. Father Ken used to always wear a tie. And I can remember just being a child and just asking, man, Father Ken, where do you get those ties from? And, he's, oh, Michael, you like these ties? I said, I do. What is that? I don't know what it was. Just something about a man in a tie that just made me go, man, that's a real man right there, And I was a 007 fan too, so maybe that has something to do with it. But it's like, okay, I'll get you a tie. And I remember Christmas morning came, and boy, I opened up that box, and boom, lo and behold, there it was. There was a tie, and it was great. It truly, truly was great. It was awesome, and I loved it. But I don't know. For some reason, I don't know if it's because I was too young or what the case is, but when we were going to the church just I don't know, something was kind of off. I can't really explain it. It just I don't know. It didn't feel like church, I guess you could say. And then again, when you're young, you don't understand the concept any differently. But it got to a point where the rules were getting ridiculous, and my mom was tired of listening to Father Terry and Father Ken, and she's just tired of it. And what finally broke the straw on the camel's back, I guess you want to use that terminology, is she left without permission. You're supposed to put like where you're going, and she left without permission to go Christmas shopping. And when she got back, they said, "Hey, where were you?" And she was like, "Oh, I went to do this, this, that, and the other," and she got in trouble. And she was like, "That's ridiculous. I can't even go Christmas shopping for my kid without y'all knowing what I'm doing." Which, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because when you're in rehab, you never know if you're going back out there to relapse or whatever the case may be. So it made total sense why they were upset. But mom was like, "No, I'm not dealing with this," and we left from there. From there, life was a little hard because we ended up on the streets. This place, Mission, Face City Mission is the name of the company, but we ended up staying there for, not for a while, I want to say it's maybe a couple of weeks, I think. A couple of weeks. We would go there and at least have a place to eat and a place to sleep, and I was exposed to different things, and this is kind of where I guess you could say God was starting to expose himself to me, I guess you could say. Because I remember every time before we could eat, we had to go into the chapel. And when we would go into the chapel, there was just something about the chapel. The singing, the preaching. I can't really put a finger on it, but it was amazing. It truly was. And I loved every minute of it. But long story short, because I don't want to dwell, too much on the homeless shelter situation, but we were homeless, basically. And I don't know all the details of circumstances. I just remember one day my mom was like, "Our new apartment is ready." And I was like, "What?" And we ended up getting into an apartment. So I don't know if it was family, friends that helped or what it was. I was so young. But I remember we got our apartment. And found out that cousins on my dad's side of the family, because he wasn't in my life, but my cousins were in my life, and they stayed, I want to say, it was probably probably a 10-minute walk to get to their house, so not too far from the apartments. They stayed in some other apartments, and this is where God really starts to put his plan into action. I'm going to pause for a minute because there's a lot of people out there who would say that, "Well, I don't really believe in this God person that you believe in, and life is terrible, and yada, yada, yada," right? And they're like, "I just don't understand." And when you become a Christian and you start reading verses like Romans 8:28 that says all things work together for good, right? That verse really, applies to the Christian life, but I like to take that first part, all things work together for good, and I like to apply it to a non-believer's life because, believe it or not, even when you're a non-believer, all the good and all the bad, they all work together. There's a bigger purpose, right? You're on this earth because God has a purpose for you. He has a plan for you. You're not here by accident. You are predestined, as it says in the book of Ephesians. In other words, God already knew who you were going to be. Like, before you even came out of your mother's womb, he knitted you in your mama's womb. Like, he knows all these things about you. You are predestined, okay? So the good and the bad come together, right? And so with that being said, this is where God's plan really, really, really starts to take off. And my mom is over there, and there's another church, another Baptist church that my cousins would get on the church bus and they would ride. And one day they were like, "Hey, come over on a Saturday night, stay the night with us. Let's get up in the morning, let's go to church." Sure, I have no problem with getting up and going on the church bus. Why not? So I get up and I get exposed to this new church, and it was really cool because it was during a special contest, I guess they were running, and they said, "Hey, if you bring a first-time guest, then we will, give you a prize, whatever." So I got a T-shirt that said "Fishers of Men" on it, and then my cousin got a T-shirt, and it was really cool, and I was really drawn to it. They had a puppet show, and it was fun. It was really great. And so I was going to that church for a while, and the pastor of that church and his wife had been trying to reach my aunt and get her to come to Christ and witness to her, and they were sometimes successful, sometimes not. They can never really get her to come to church. Well, one day my mom is over there, And my cousins and I are in the backyard, and we're just kind of hanging out, and we're just kind of doing our own